close your eyes and pull like a dog.
Can wait no more, and now he urges Bouvier to go and try and seal the deal in the champion hurdle.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
There it is, and it's all over. And Cork are the All-Ireland football champions for 2010.
But it's a silver medal for Ireland. The first Irish medal ever at the Olympic Games. A young crew. This is only the beginning for Gary O'Donovan and Paul O'Donovan.
Today we managed to bring Sam home, and we're totally delighted for ourselves, but more importantly for the people of Cork.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport Podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star, and I'm joined on today's show by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy and freelance sports journalist Joe McCarthy, whose work you can read in the Southern Star, the Echo and the Irish Examiner. On today's podcast, we're previewing the Best in the West final as our search for West Cork's greatest ever sportsperson reaches its climax. The Best in the West is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union is your trusted local financial partner. Access your money 24/7 from anywhere in the world with an Access Credit Union current account and enjoy all the benefits while keeping your money local. From a field of 16, we're down to the final two, and on Saturday at 10 a.m, West Cork's greatest ever rally driver, Cronin, will take on Ireland's fastest woman, Phil Healy, in a Twitter poll for the ages. Later on the podcast, we're going to be hearing from Mikey Galvin, Cronin's co-driver, about what makes the Ballylickey man so special. We'll also be joined by Phil's sister, Joan Healy. Joan is a top-class sprinter in her own right, and she's going to talk to us about sibling rivalry and what it was like growing up with the woman who would go on to become Ireland's fastest. But first, lads, let's chat briefly about Best in the West. With no sport on over the last few months, this was a chance for us to celebrate the great and good of West Cork sport. It opened my eyes to the talents of the likes of Niall Cahalane, Bill Daly and Jennifer O'Leary, names I knew but probably didn't fully appreciate. Kieran, just looking back over the last few weeks and months, what's been your highlight of the competition overall?
I kind of sound like a broken drum at this stage because I'm always beating the same tune, but I think it's a celebration of the West Cork sports people that we have here in West Cork, Jack. Like I said at the very outset, we had a big job in narrowing it down to 16 in the shortlist, and it highlights again the incredible depth and variety of talent in West Cork. And what's also kind of surprised me is the closeness of the polls. Even going back to last weekend's semi-finals, when you'd Phil Daly getting the better of Paul O'Donovan by 1%, and Keith Cronin getting the better of Bill Daly by less than 1%. So it shows that the public have engaged with Best in the West as well. And even for this week's Southern Star, what I did is I touched base with a variety of local sports people right around West Cork, from John Caulfield to Nolly Cleary herself was in it, Pat Prendergast, Libby Coppinger, Orla Cronin, Dara McElhinney, you name it, they're in it, to get their thoughts and predictions for this Saturday's final. And what was very interesting, again, was how even it was. So it just shows as well that there's an appreciation for the two finalists and all the 16 who've been in the shortlist, and also, Jack, for the likes, let's say, of Keith Cronin and Bill Daly and these people, it's brought their profile and their achievements back into the limelight again. If we're talking about Phil Healy, she's a current sports star. Bill Daly's time has passed when he was top of the rollerball. But the last couple of weeks, people were talking about Bill Daly again, kind of the left man who was two-time world champion. So it's just been brilliant to celebrate and laud these West Cork people all over again.
Sure, I know you were slightly disappointed by the lack of female representation in the original final 16, but I guess in a way, does that make Phil's run to the final all the more impressive, especially considering she knocked out West Cork's only ever Olympic medalist in the semi-final?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's vindication of both her talent and her standing, not just in West Cork, but outside of it and around the country as well. We're talking about probably one of the most exciting athletes, Olympic athletes at the moment on the scene and track and field. And it's been interesting to see the volume of voting go up with each passing round as well. I think Kieran is right. A lot of people got behind us inside and outside West Cork. And although there weren't that many, there wasn't as many female entrants as any of us would have liked. I think it's a reflection though of modern day sport that maybe 10 years ago would we even have had one. And I think things are changing. And I think, to be fair, with each passing edition of the Southern Star, you read more and more about both local and national female stars, and they're coming to the fore, and it is having an effect definitely on younger generations. The people that, when you go to training, or when we do go back to training, you do hear girls in training sessions in GA football talking about Cork ladies footballers rather than male footballers as an example. It's the only example I have. But yes, it is great to see Phil Healy there, not because she's a woman, but because of her talent being recognised. And the next time that Kieran does this, when he'll do 64 stars and start it off at the beginning of the year, who knows how many female athletes we'll have.
Ger, something we touched on last week's podcast with Dennis Hurley, who was on with us, was the fact that no GAA player had made it to the Final Four. We discussed it for a couple of minutes, but I just kind of wanted to get your take on why you think no footballer, hurler, camogie player, or ladies footballer managed to go past the quarter-final stage. I
could be smart and say they're all out training at the moment, but it won't. I think, to be fair, I think team sports and club sports in West Cork, as you probably know, have gathered very quickly from living here in the area, is quite tribal. And whilst a lot of people outside of Castlehaven would appreciate what Niall Cahalane was and is, unfortunately, a lot of people would find it hard to vote for him, and that's pure ridiculousness and stupidity, but that probably is the way it is. Somebody like Keith Cronin and somebody like Phil Healy are more appealing to people outside of their sports who don't know a lot about it but are aware of their success. In GAA, it's very local and it's very tribal, as I said, and I think a lot of people inside Union Hall, Castletownshend will obviously understand and vote for Niall Cahalane, and a lot of people outside would have had too. Same for Jennifer O'Leary. But it's the casual voter, if you want to call them that, in this kind of competition and this tournament that we've had, the online tournament and online through Twitter. More often than not, GA is quite prevalent and GA is quite active, even though there's no games going on. And I think people get kind of used to seeing their own club's information, and they are used to reading about their own particular club more and more as time goes on. And it's a bit harder to go outside of the four walls of your own club and probably say, oh yeah, that fella was brilliant, or she was a brilliant camogie player, I'll vote for them. Whereas you hear Phil Healy, it's easy because she's not tied to any one particular club. And the same for Keith Cronin. We're talking about a 4-time British Rally champion in 4 different cars, so the people inside his sport can appreciate what he is, and the people outside, when they read that, can also appreciate it. So to be honest with you, Jack, it's a difficult one because but I do think when it comes down to tribalism and team sports, it's interesting that 2 individuals, although granted Keith has a co-driver with him anytime he's in a car, it's interesting that 2 individuals, and Bill Daly as well, made the last 4. So it's kind of an individual slant on things, that their performances, their successes are probably that bit more easier to gravitate towards than teams. I don't know, but I think it's something to do with that.
Okay, well, let's look at our 2 finalists then. And something I just kind of want to touch on with regards Keith Cronin is his ranking amongst Ireland's greatest ever rally drivers. Now, I'm not going to ask you to rank the top 10 Irish rally drivers of all time, because it's a difficult one, especially for people who don't cover motorsport on a regular basis. But whenever anyone introduces Phil Healy, it's Ireland's fastest woman. And throughout this competition, when we've introduced Keith Cronin, it's been West Cork's greatest rally driver as opposed to Ireland's, or even Munster's, or even the whole county of Cork. So, Kieran, I'll come to you first. What would you be able to place Keith Cronin in an Irish context, or feel free to tell me if you can't?
Talking to Mikey Galvin, who was Keith's co-driver, what was very interesting is Mikey talks about Keith's fan base, and we're not immersed in the kind of motorsport community, so we probably don't appreciate Keith Cronin's standing as much as someone as Mikey does, who lives and breathes motorsport. But he said even across in Britain, Mikey was across with Keith when they won the last British Rally Championship in 2017, and he said everybody knows Keith Cronin there. Everybody's coming up to him. Everybody wants to get knowledge off him. Mikey actually talks about when Mikey did the Cork 20 a couple of years ago, before he linked up with Keith. he said he saw Keith Cronin kind of lining up in the same rally, and he was like, Jesus, that's Keith Cronin. And even then, he said there was people just gravitating towards him. He has this aura in Irish motorsport. And there was one tweet that kind of caught my attention last weekend in the polls, and it was from an Aidan Caddy. And he said Keith is probably the most naturally gifted rally driver Ireland has ever seen. He would have excelled in the WRC. And another fella, Kevin O'Shaughnessy, kind of jumped in and said, 100% Keith should have been handed the keys of something in the WRC championship this year. So when you see motorsport fans talk about Keith Cronin in that kind of, with such kind of praise that he is WRC standard, which he is, you start to appreciate, Jesus, Keith Cronin is something special. And even this week, Jack, we have a couple of promo videos out online that are promoting the final on Saturday, and it's in-car footage of Keith Cronin in the West Cork Rally a couple of years ago, and Jesus, it's something else. Kind of actually sit in the car, you effectively sit in the car with Keith and watching him manoeuvre the car down these tight, twisty roads around West Cork, and you really kind of understand, I suppose, the skill that he needs, the control of the car and everything. So I've learned, and I have a far bigger appreciation for Keith Cronin's talent after Best in the West, because we're getting to see more about Keith. We're getting to hear more from his fans. The likes of Martin Walsh has been educating me over the last couple of weeks, kind of hammering home, Jesus, Keith is this good. And the good news is that it looks like Keith isn't finished yet. There could be another chapter to come. So we might hear more about that in next week, in the weeks ahead. But what Best in the West has done, it's helped Keith Cronin's profile again, not just in West Cork, to kind of educate us all about how good the Ballylickey man is, but even this competition is kind of, it's getting nationally recognised as well, and people are talking about Keith, and everyone has remembered just how good this man is. So like I said, there could be another chapter to come in the years ahead.
And Jerry, you mentioned a few weeks ago that your son, who has an interest in motorsport and rally, when he heard a name, or maybe you said that he'd seen Keith in action, he was almost in awe of him. So is there anything you can add there in terms of Keith's position in Irish rallying and even European rallying?
I would, like Kieran, I wouldn't have the vast knowledge that Martin Walsh has, but what I do know is when I was growing up and the West Cork Rally was a huge thing, Jimmy McRae was a massive name in world rally, not just the local rallying. Keith is mentioned in the same breath as Jimmy McRae. And if, again, I would bow to the knowledge of Martin Walsh, and I would bow to the knowledge of the motor racing, or the rallying fraternity, of which is huge, not just in West Cork, but in Ireland. And I can only echo what Kieran said there in terms of the guy's talent. I mean, I don't know anything about driving, even though I'm in a car and I look like a bit like a rally driver today. I do know from looking at the videos previously of Keith, he's quick. And you don't get to where he got in the British, because I asked before, you don't get to where he got in the British Rally Championships. You don't win the British Rally Championship unless you've got a good car, and you don't get a good car unless you're capable of driving it to the absolute limit in very different conditions, both road conditions, tarmac, all those things that come with it. That's the pure test of a driver in rallying terms. Like the British Rally is looked upon as a real test of a driver's skills and a sounding for the World Rally Championship. As for my son, we met Keith at, I can't remember where it was, but it was just somewhere we met him at some event. And Keith is the most down to earth. You would not know he is the star that he is from speaking to me. Only like we had a couple of quick words because we would have met at the sports awards, previous sports awards. But he took the time to talk to Fionn, my son. And when I explained to Fionn who he was as we were walking up, he knew the name. The name registered with him, even though he's young. And therein lies there's your point. Like in terms of West Cork and in terms of Irish rallying, Keith Cronin is well known, revered, up there with the best. And the only accolade I can give him from my limited knowledge of it is that I knew who Jimmy McRae was, and I knew what Jimmy McRae was capable of doing and all the things, the rallies that he won internationally and nationally. And if Keith Cronin is being spoken of in the same breath, the guy is clearly a talent. And he's I think we talked about the momentum that you get from a competition like this. It's clear the motor racing inside and outside West Cork has got behind Keith and gotten him to the final, and it may well get him over the line.
Okay, let's switch our attention to Phil then. Last week's podcast, I put to both Kieran and Dennis that Phil may well be West Cork's greatest active athlete. The reasons I gave for that was because she's currently Ireland's fastest ever woman, ever in the history of Irish athletics. She is the fastest woman. So, like, that's not easily done. There are very few women who get to be called Ireland's fastest woman throughout the history of athletics. So, Ger, I want to put that point to you. She has the national record over 1 and 200 metres. She's a generational talent, essentially. Is there anything in my point that she may well be West Cork's greatest active athlete?
Off the top of my head, Jack, as you were asking the question, I was trying to think of other sports and other individuals that might rank alongside her where they are at the moment, and it's very difficult to do it. She clearly, anyone that can run 200 metres in 23 seconds, I think it's 23 seconds, I think that's the record. My God, I mean, I couldn't walk, 200 metres in an hour, I don't know what it is, like, but that skill, that talent, everyone knows about her ability, everyone knows about her potential, and it's still, I think the thing, Jack, that the key thing is it's so early in her career. It really is early in her career. Now, the coronavirus, like all athletes, like Phil Healy, it's a big setback because they've lost out on a key portion or a key part of their careers, and it'll be interesting to see how she bounces back from that in the coming months and years. In terms of potential, in terms of ability, and in terms of just sheer doggedness. I mean, any of the video clips that you or I or anyone else has seen of Phil in action, she is frighteningly quick. That's the best way I can describe it. And she, from speaking to her the few times that I have had the pleasure of speaking to her on a one-to-one basis, she is one of the most determined athletes and individuals I've ever spoken to. And not that she's kind of got this stern, determined look in her face, but from interviewing sports people down through the years, she has this switch that that she has, that when it comes to competition and it goes off, you just don't want to be standing next to her in a race because she's got that intimidating, without being an intimidating person, intimidating persona. She's got those records behind her and she's on the way up. I think that she is West Cork's probably right now most purely gifted athlete and sports person. And where that takes her, who knows?
Okay, well, let's pit Keith Cronin and Phil Healy against each other, considering that's what we're going to be doing on Saturday. And Kieran, I want to come to you with this point first. If we're to look at motorsport and athletics, so sprinting specifically, which of those two sports do you think it would be harder to succeed at on the level that these two athletes have succeeded at? Now, I know you're not going to want to denigrate either of the two's achievements, but if you're starting out as I would say 6 or 7 year old taking up a sport and you want to get to the very top of the sport, which do you think you'd face more challenges? Athletics, sprinting specifically, or motorsport and all that goes along with that, money, as Ger spoke to us about a few weeks ago on the podcast?
I suppose on motorsport first, kind of talent takes you a long way, but so does money. I think for Keith to kind of take that step up to the WRC, and he has flirted with it before, it takes a lot of money. Obviously Keith is quite talented, but I do think athletics is an almost harder kind of sport to break into. I suppose from a kind of an Irish sprinting point of view, we're not a country that has been blessed with great sprinters over the years. There's obviously been a few, but we're not a nation of sprinters. So Phil is kind of bucking the trend there. Like we know our long distance runners from over the years, the kind of the Sonia O'Sullivans, the Katrina McKiernans and all those. But Phil is kind of bucking the trend. She's the fastest Irish woman of all time. And I always find it very hard to wrap my head around that, because no Irish woman ever has run faster than Philly has over those distances, 100 and 200 metres. When you actually say it like that no woman ever from Ireland has run as fast as she is, it's quite incredible. And when you're looking at athletics too, for Phil to kind of push herself up into the top 30, top 40 in the world in such a global event and such a tough event like sprinting is a phenomenal achievement. Because as well as that, we kind of have to say too that funding isn't great for Irish sports people. So she's up against a lot of kind of obstacles in a way, whether it's funding, kind of coming from a country where sprinting wouldn't be kind of a household, and she's come from West Cork and she's knocked down and she's sped past every obstacle that she's encountered so far to get to where she is. And it's incredible to think that a West Cork woman has achieved what she has and holds the records that she has. So kind of with the greatest respect to Keith, I think what Phil has achieved, it's in a tougher sporting environment. That said, Keith obviously has won huge events like the British Rally Championship and 4 times, and for Phil to get to the next level, she needs to be pushing into finals. She needs to get to European finals. She needs to get to Olympic semi-finals. But it's very hard to kind of put the two sports side by side and judge them, because the ceiling for one isn't the ceiling for another. But I would have to say what Phil has achieved and is achieving is amazing. And like you've said a lot in the last couple of weeks, there is more to come. She will get faster. She will break her own national record. So the sky is the limit in some regards for her.
And George, just to pick up on that point again, nearly almost, I'd say 95%, maybe 99% of the people that I've ever encountered in my life have at some stage in their life tried to sprint 100 metres. So she is faster than almost every single person in the country. Whereas I don't know anyone who's ever driven a rally car. It's not a sport that everyone can get involved in. So for that reason, I'm siding with Kieran and saying that it's more difficult to become a world-class sprinter just because of all the challenges and competitors you're up against. But that's not to say it's not near impossible to succeed in rallying either, Jared.
I take your point on it, and one of the things, just as you were speaking there, I was thinking about the two people that are in this final. Their preparation is very similar in that they have to go through a huge amount of preparation and mental toughness. It takes a huge mentally tough person to get into a rally car and drive it at 200 miles an hour, but it also takes the same mental toughness to qualify, to train, to dedicate your life, to put away all your put your private life to one side as an athlete. It's an all-year-round thing. You see the culmination of it at Olympics and European Championships, but the dedication that the likes of Phil Healy has and the mental toughness that you have to be an Olympic athlete, to be successful at it, is frightening. I would disagree with you though, because on one point that I would say, I would give it to Keith Cronin on this. In a final, and we've seen it countless times before with all the best athletes in the world, one mistake after 3 years of preparation in a final could cost Phil Healy. Nothing. It's just the way it goes on the day. You can prepare for just about everything, but a mistake, and a human mistake, means you're a step behind, or means you fall, or maybe you don't get over the line when you should have, and that is crushing. That's why you have to be mentally tough to prepare for that. One mistake in a rally car at 150 miles an hour and you could be dead. And it's the one thing I admire about Formula 1 racers, NASCAR, rally drivers. People call them crazy in that, like, the speeds that they're driving at, the control and the ice cool blood in your veins that you have to do what Keith Cronin does in snow, ice, and all those types of weather. Until you sit in a car with a rally driver, and I haven't had the pleasure yet, and actually sit in a car and go through something like that, you can see the video clips and you can appreciate it, but you can't feel it. And to be that cool under pressure for that length of time, for the career that he's had, is astounding to me. And you have to overcome crashes, nicks, and but the fact that you're that close from disaster, I'm down on athletics. I think I've outlined why the mentally tough people that like Phil Healy have to be an athlete. But if you fall in the final, you fall, and you do lose an awful lot. It's heartbreaking. It's spirit crushing. You get it wrong in rallying, who knows what happens? You're in a ditch. You're down the side of a mountain. And for that reason, motorcyclists, MotoGP, and all those types of top riders and drivers at the top of their profession, I have the utmost respect for. So for that reason alone, and only that reason, I would tip it in Keith's favour.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, which I obviously completely overlooked, because the 99% of people who I know who's tried sprinting, they know they're going to do it safely, whereas it takes a certain type of person to sit behind the wheel of a rally car. So lads, let's get final predictions. Kieran, who wins Best in the West?
Oh my God, where do I go? This is so tough, because I have such admiration and respect for both of them. If you're looking at it from a very analytical point of view, Keith has got the biggest number of votes so far in all of the rounds, from getting the better of Conor Horan to getting the better of Junior Ferry to Bill Daly. His support base is huge, absolutely huge, and for that alone, you would think he's probably the favourite going into this weekend's final. But I'm going to go with Phil Healy. Just something about Phil, just to see how her famous race years ago was when she came back from the depths of hell when she was running for UCC in that famous 4x400 metre relay race at the intervarsities, and she came from nowhere in that last lap and she took gold, and it was incredible. And she came from behind against Paul O'Donovan in the Twitter Pole semi-final last Sunday. She came from a good way back to kind of dip under the line first. And I just think that she will get the backing this Saturday because some of the reasons that we've outlined, Jack. She is a fantastic sports person, but what she is, and you understand it a lot more by talking to people in West Cork, is she's such a terrific role model and ambassador for young girls and young women in West Cork. They've seen a West Cork woman work incredibly hard to rise to the top of her game in Ireland, and it just inspires everyone to kind of follow in Phil's footsteps. And it's not just girls, it's young boys too. When Phil picked up a Celtic Ross Sports Star Award last year, a young boy from Skibbereen came over to the Sports Awards just to meet Phil because Phil is his hero. He's a young boy from Skip, he was 10 or 11, and it just stuck with me kind of, this young West Cork boy is kind of, he was looking at Phil kind of these open eyes of like, Jesus, it's Phil Healy. And I just think she's done such a terrific job for promoting her sport. She's a class act on and off the track. And even though she'll have to pull out the performance of her life this Saturday, I think, to win. And she could have been in the Olympics, but like I told her coach Jane Cormac earlier in the week, I said, like, forget the Olympics for this year. It's all about best in the West. This is the competition that matters. And I'm going to give Phil Healy my vote to come out on top on Saturday.
Lovely stuff. And Ger, Phil Healy or Keith Cronin, who is best in the West?
It's hard to argue with what Kieran has just said there. I'd agree with all of it. I think analytically, if you're watching votes, Keith has had probably the greater number of votes. But I think and I believe and I have from a while back that one of the things Keith probably Cronin will learn from this experience is that his PR, unlike Phil Healy, whose PR is very, very good and is out there and is interviewing and is talking all the time and people know her and see her face, maybe this will remind Keith that there's a bigger audience outside the rally fraternity that are very, very interested in him and interested in his achievements. And I don't know what's coming down the line that Kieran alluded to, but I'm very interested to find out in the Southern Star over the next couple of weeks. He's equally, like Kieran has outlined, just as nice, just as determined, a very, very nice man, very, very nice person, very approachable. And I think it's been a good. This experience and the best in the West has been a good thing for his PR, as I mentioned earlier on. I actually think not because of the analytics, but I think because of the amount of people within motor racing outside of West Cork that might have taken notice of this and will take notice of the final. I think he's going to win. It's no, slight on Phil Healy if she comes second in this. I think her, as Kieran outlined there, I don't need to go over it. Her legacy, she's building it already. But I think there are more motorsport fans in West Cork than there are athletics. And I think there are more younger motorsport fans that have not been tapped into yet. And the motor racing and West Cork Rally and all these other rallies need to start looking at that, because there is a market for it there. But you've got to put the drivers in front of the kids, and they got to know who they are. They got to see the colours of their car and their kit. Only then will you build the next generation of fans and rally drivers. And I think the way Phil Healy is being put forward and the way she presents herself, she's a surefire star if she keeps going. And with Keith, hopefully he'll get back, to whatever seat he gets and wherever it is. I think he deserves it. But I actually think, just on what I've seen over the last couple of weeks of this tournament and on Twitter, I think Keith will do it.
Great stuff. Well, thanks very much for that, lads. Now, coming up after this short break, we're chatting to Ireland international sprinter Joan Healy about her sister Phil.
The best in the West in association with Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union is your trusted local financial partner. Access your money 24/7 from anywhere in the world with an Access Credit Union current account, and enjoy all the benefits while keeping your money local. We support local communities. We support you.
Now, the first finalist we're going to profile on this week's podcast is Phil Healy, and to do that, we're going to be joined in a couple of minutes by her sister, Joan Healy, who's an internationally classed sprinter in her own right. Kieran, you spoke to Joan about Phil. How is Joan keeping? And what did you talk about?
Joan's keeping well, Jack. I suppose a quick word about Joan first. She was after a superb indoor season earlier in the year. She ran some phenomenal times. And on her own, Joan is an international class sprinter. She's one of the top Irish female sprinters at the moment. So she's also the older sister to Phil Healy. And what I've always found interesting is that in those early years, it was Joan who was number one in the Healy household. She was the sprinter first and foremost, and then Phil was following in her footsteps. And now, obviously, we all know what Phil has gone on to achieve. So it was just great to get the insight from Joan just about her sister Phil, kind of what drives Phil, what makes her so special. So yeah, she's the perfect person, Jack, to give us an insight into the Ballylickey Bullet. Who better to chat about Phil Healy than her older sister Joan, who has been there from the very, very start. Joan, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
It's great to see Phil through to the final of Best in the West, and it's obviously for what she's achieved on the track. But like I said there, you're her older sister, you know her better than anyone else. So just getting to know Phil a bit better. What's she like as a younger sister?
She's competitive. The two of us are very competitive together, definitely since we've started athletics and started racing against each other. But she's an extremely determined person, no matter what she puts her mind to, be it her schoolwork or be it sport. You know, once she sets her mind on something, she is going to achieve it.
Because like you kind of mentioned there, that competitiveness that Phil has. But you have it too, Joan. Like, you're one of the top Irish sprinters in the country as well at the moment, and you have been for a good 3 years. And you were actually first, like you were first on the track before Phil kind of followed you could say. Kind of, what's that sibling rivalry been like over the years? Kind of, you probably drive each other on?
Yeah, I suppose I had a great start as a junior, really. Phil was kind of, you know, introducing herself to the sport, kind of finding her way in which event would suit her. I suppose at that time I was really suited to the 60 and the 100, and I'd kind of established my niche really, and I was doing pretty well with Europeans and World Championships. Then I hit an awful lot of injuries, and I suppose Phil, you know, was with me all the time, all the way up, and she probably learned so much from me. And definitely from when I got injured, you know, Phil definitely, you know, took on board, you know, things that I would be saying, like, don't be doing this, or, you know, I've learned the hard way. So she definitely made the most of that and took it on board, and that's probably why she's had a much better development from a junior athlete to a senior athlete than, say, I did.
When did you kind of notice that Phil had that kind of X factor, that she was going to move on to the next level?
I suppose really when she was around the age of 18 and she was starting to make finals in European juniors, and her times were really starting to drop, and she was starting to make the Irish senior team, which is a massive achievement. Like, I think people take for granted how hard it is to go from being a really successful junior to being a really successful senior athlete. And with it comes an awful lot of sacrifices. So I suppose from her very late teens to her early 20s, we knew that, you know, Phil was really onto something here.
And you kind of mentioned there the sacrifices that it takes. And again, you know better than anyone how tough it is to make it in the world of athletics. Can you just explain to the listeners, I suppose, the sacrifices that yourself and Phil would have made over the years, kind of how much time and commitment you give to athletics?
It's a massive commitment. I mean, it's probably the hardest part is probably when you're in your teens and your social lives are starting. You do kind of have to make the hard decisions of, you know, not going out on the Saturday nights, missing all the 18th birthdays and the 21sts for the big races. But, you know, it pays off, and not a lot of people make those sacrifices, and it definitely shows in those that do. Phil has made massive sacrifices in comparison to myself. I mean, I got injured probably when I was finishing up in college, so the next route for me was to go out working, seeing as, you know, I hadn't pushed on quite as far in my athletics yet, whereas Phil was in a better position in college. She was really rising up through the ranks. So, you know, it was probably a little bit easier to make the decision of becoming a full-time athlete. But I mean, that being said, I mean, she's moved herself to Waterford, away from her family, away from her friends, down to her coach, to put herself in a better position.
You've obviously watched on, like we all have over the years, as the national records fall and she sets all these stunning PBs. Does any performance stand out for you from her 100 to 200, even to 400 over the last couple of years?
I mean, at this stage now, you know, nothing surprises me anymore, because every race she goes out into, she's just going to produce something more. But she's really set the bar for Irish women's sprinting. She's put us on the map. She's made all of us raise our game. And I suppose really most notably last year when she broke her foot, that's probably the time that really stands out more for me, more so than any of the national records or any of the massive PBs, because she was in such great shape before she broke her foot, and her sights were really set on perhaps getting a medal at those world universities. I don't know, does anyone understand really what it took for Phil to bring herself back from a foot injury, of all things for her to happen, her foot, that she couldn't run, she couldn't do much, and she adapted her training, and Shane was brilliant with her, really, making all the necessary changes and bringing her back. I mean, I don't know many people who have broken their foot or had such a serious injury and still managed to make a world final. Apart from the the physical side of it, the mental side of it, what that took for her must have been incredible. So that's probably what stands out most for me, because she knows that she can do it now. She knows that she's probably had the hardest time of her career, and she's overcome it, and it'll probably always stand to her. And even though it didn't happen to me, it definitely stands to me, because I know that there's not really any excuses anymore. I always think when I'm finding something hard, I always think, well, Phil broke her foot, and 12 weeks to the day she was in a world final, so I can definitely pull something out of the bag.
There's a lot of love and appreciation for Phil, not only around West Cork but around the country. And it was a couple of weeks ago chatting to Darren McElhinney, he was telling me like she's such a class act on and off the track, and you touched on it there too, kind of like she's a role model too for this huge kind of younger generation.
Absolutely.
On the way up. And even in Irish kind of athletics at the moment, even like there's all these sprinters trying to make their names, but they're all trying to catch Phil, but she's getting faster, so you have a very intriguing dynamic going on at the moment.
Absolutely. She's a brilliant role model, a great ambassador for the sport. I mean, she's so open about everything that she does, from on her social media platforms. She never hides what she's doing. She shares her training sessions. She shared everything she did on her recovery last year to getting back to a world championships. And she never shies away from talking to the media about her successes and things that she finds hard. So I think people like to hear things like that. It's always a bit more inspiring when you see someone who's so successful in their sport, but then that they're willing to talk about it and talk about how they got there.
The fact that Phil has ran faster than any Irish woman ever has before, kind of, it's an incredible kind of, I suppose, on her CV to have that. But can you explain to us, Joan, kind of just how hard athletics is, kind of those sprint distances, like the explosiveness that you need, kind of the endurance that you need, like for sprint athletes like yourself and Phil, there's so many different components that have to come together to create a good sprinter.
It is. I mean, it's probably one of the toughest events in athletics, in that there's so much talent and it's so hard to break through the ranks. But that's where the commitment then comes in, because there's so many aspects to cover as a sprinter, be it from your explosive speed to your speed endurance to the work you're doing in the gym. It's pretty much a full-time job to be making it at that level.
I've asked Phil this question before, and I've asked Shane McCormick before, and I always kind of sound very silly asking it, but I'm going to ask you anyway as well, Joan. Can Phil get faster, and will she get faster, do you think?
100%. I mean, she's only 25, so she's really only kind of scratching the surface and coming into her peak years. I know her sights were set on the Olympics this year. Probably in some ways, well, like no matter what the situation, Phil will always take it as a positive anyway, and she'll just get on with it. But at the same time, it's still another year to train. It's another year to get faster, stronger, fitter. And Phil and Shane, no doubt the two of them will definitely take advantage of that time. But 100%, there's a lot more in store for Phil.
Phil has made the headlines, obviously, in 100 and 200. You're like a 60-metre specialist. If I lined yourself and Phil up in a 60-metre race now, who should I put my money on?
Well, we actually had our head-to-head at Nationals this year, and I just snuck out on top. So I'm going to hang on to my 60 meters and try to chase her down now for the 100.
Just on yourself for a second, Joan, what is the plan for the next couple of months, kind of with the athletics season starting to come back in track in some form?
Well, I'm probably in some of the best shape I've ever been at this, especially for this time of the year. So it's a little bit of a shame that I can't really get out there and race. I mean, we haven't really gotten any official dates as to when racing might begin. We might hear a bit more, when the next phase starts. But at the moment I'm just focusing on different aspects of my race, trying to improve on those for the indoor season next year. We've got double championships next year with European and those postponed World Championships, so my sights are going to be set on going to the two of those and hopefully my eyes are set on breaking the national record over 60 meters.
Before I let you go, Joan, I'm going to ask you to make a pitch to our listeners and our viewers who are on the fence about whether they're going to vote for Phil Healy or Keith Cronin. Why should people vote for Phil Healy to be crowned best in the West this Saturday?
Well, I think she's a fantastic ambassador for the sport. She's an incredible role model for young athletes out there, and especially for women's sport. I mean, every race she goes to, she just gets better and better. She's raising the game for everyone in athletics, and she's definitely put sprinting on the map for Ireland. At such a young age, with so many years ahead of her, it's just so exciting to see what's to come for her. So I know things like these definitely drive her on when she knows she's got the support of West Cork and of the country. It was a tight battle between herself and Paul, and I know she was hoping to win the semi-final, but I'm sure there was a slight little bit of surprise at the same time because Paul is such a well-established athlete. But I am sure she was incredibly proud that she got so many votes, and that people are so proud of her and inspired by her. So I hope people can still come out now on Saturday evening and do the exact same thing and push her over the line.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joan, for joining us.
No problem. Thanks a million.
The best in the West in association with Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union is your trusted local financial partner. Access your money 24/7 from anywhere in the world with an Access Credit Union current account and enjoy all the benefits while keeping your money local. We support local communities. We support you.
One of the most interesting jobs in all of sport is that of a rally driver's co-driver. So we're delighted to be able to chat to Keith Cronin's co-driver, Mikey Galvin, on this week's podcast. Kieran, you caught up with Mikey to ask him about what makes the Ballylickey man special.
Yeah, Mikey was delighted to come on the Star Sport podcast to start off with Jack. When I told him that he would have to praise Keith, all he was doing was laughing. He said that'd be music to Keith's ears. So very interesting to talk to a co-driver, because I suppose the dynamic and the trust between a co-driver and a driver is so unique. Like, the co-driver has to have 100% trust and faith in what the driver is doing. And from talking to Mikey, you can see that Mikey was co-driver with Keith when Keith won his fourth British Rally Championship back in 2017. So Mikey knows better than most how Keith works, what drives him, and his insight is very interesting, especially when Mikey talks about how Keith switches off as soon as he steps outside rallying. And when I spoke to Mikey earlier, I started off with asking him about the 2017 British Rally Championship win, because that came down to fine margins. It came down to the final rally and the final weekend, and it came down to 1/10 of a second. So Mikey filled me in on what that weekend was like for himself and Keith. Delighted to be joined on the Star Sport podcast by Mikey Galvin, co-driver with Keith Cronin. Let's go straight away. Let's go back to 2017, Mikey. You were there in the car with Keith when he won his fourth British Rally Championship, and that was dramatic circumstances over in the Isle of Man. You won the championship by 1/10 of a second, was it? Kind of talk me through that whole weekend.
Yeah, so that year we started off was a huge year. I think it was the biggest opportunity either of us has ever got with M Sport World Rally Team. So we started the year at the beginning, and we had a couple of issues. We had a couple of good events. We had punctures. We were saying, oh, this isn't this isn't going great. Like, this isn't going to work out the way we had planned it. And I have a cat here now crying beside me. And as the year went on, it got a bit better and better and better. And eventually it came to a head, and we said, whoa, like, here we are now, and we're in the mix of it. We can actually do this. After all the bad luck we've had, accidents, blah, 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 we're here, and we're in the Isle of Man, and we have to do the business. And the rally was split into 2 events over the one event. And we won the first event, and we started off the second event on the same day. It's a funny system. And it came all the way to the end, and we had to go into the last stage, and we had to do the business. And it came a whole year of work, traveling, recce's, everything, all came down to a tenth of a second, and that was it. So it was my first one. It was absolutely amazing, and it was great for Keith to get his fourth one, you know. And it was so tense because, you know, anything at that level, and when it comes down to being, you know, that tight, the smallest thing, you know, like a bottle of water falling underneath the pedals could finish your whole year. You know, just a couple of seconds, as you know, like a tenth of a second, you could lose that with just one lapse of concentration. So it was tense, yeah, but it was really good, really good. Great memory to look back on, you know.
What was Keith like going into that final stage? I'm interested to see kind of his demeanour, you could call it, because like you said, one mistake and it's fine margins, and he ended up winning by 1/10 of a second. Was he cool? Is he calm in it? Like, how does he deal under pressure? What's he like in the car?
Yeah, that's the funny thing about Keith. He's actually an extremely calm guy. It's in situations like that is where he's most relaxed, actually. You know, I've become good friends with Keith over the last 4 years, and I'd like to say that I know a different side to Keith than other people would see. If you're at a certain level of friendship with Keith, you see a completely different side. Everyone outside sees him in the rally car and in the service parks and on the TV, and you know, everything's very calculated and, you know, whatever else, and very professional. But outside of that, he's actually such a you know, he's a completely chilled out guy, and he's actually in the car. He's like that too. So in a huge moment like that, everything's very relaxed. We don't get too stressed because there's no point. You have to go in and do a huge job. So there's no point in either of us getting stressed with each other or about anything. It is what it is. On the start line of a stage like that, you just have to go in, and he has to drive the car. I have to call the note, and it has to click. There's no point getting stressed about anything else. You can get stressed about it after when it's over. And in that moment, we were just barely even speaking. It was just calm, have a deep breath. Two of us know what we have to go and do. Let's go do it, and we'll talk after. And that's, you know, a huge part of it for him too, and because he doesn't get too worked up. You know, you see people there up, you know, in big rallies like that, they get very worked up, and you know, they could even have fallings out with people over it because they get into the state of mind where everything is bizarre, you know. But just I think Keith's way of doing it, and actually I think I learned a lot from him, actually, to, you know, competing at that level, and anything with pressure involved is just relax, get it done. And you know, you can assess it after, and you can think back what I should have done different at the time, but just relax, just chill out and get it done, and you can focus much better.
From a co-driver's point of view, so Mikey, is Keith hard to control, or does he follow the pace notes?
He is very good at reading, you know, at taking on the pace notes. You know, he's very particular in how he makes them. They're not very complex or anything. They're very simple, but he puts a lot of work. The two of us put a lot of work into them, but he takes them on really well. You know, he's very good at absorbing information, you know, and calculating that information. So in the car, I try and stay as calm as I can, and to, you know, deliver everything to him very calm, very straight, and you'll rarely get you know, questioned on anything or asked for anything to be repeated or anything. Everything is just kind of monotone, and yeah, he can start to drive pretty fast, but I'd like to say that I have a good hold on him. He doesn't get out of control very often. He knows where his limit's at, and as I said, he's a very calculated fella. You know, he knows when it's over the limit or when he can do more. He knows that, so I don't need to tell him, you know, too much in that regard, you know.
I was watching earlier some kind of in-car footage of Keith in action, and it's so impressive to watch kind of the control he has over the car.
Yeah.
Skill-wise, how good is Keith Cronin? And then also, how much trust do you as a co-driver have in Keith in to kind of keep that car on the road?
I do. Look, to be sitting in a car like that and have done what we've done, and to be at that level, you have to have a huge amount of trust, coming from both sides. It just has to be. If you don't have that trust, you're not going to get the job done. You're not going to be comfortable. As I said, you need to be comfortable in those situations. You can't be up in a heap because things are coming too fast and times are too tense to be getting all like that. So we've had a couple of moments where I've had to bring him back a touch, but it was fine. But I could count in one hand the amount of times that I've had to do that. Usually he's very, very calculated, knows where the limit is. You have accidents, but that's going to happen anyway.
Like I said, you know better than most his skill levels. And there's one tweet there that I'm going to read out to you, because obviously the best in the West has been on the last couple of weeks, and this Aidan Keddy said, Keith is probably the most naturally gifted rally driver Ireland has ever seen. 4 British rally titles and beating the likes of Mark Higgins and Gwandaf. I just murdered that name there. Along the way, he would have excelled in the WRC. Keith really is at that level where he could have kicked on and he could have gone on WRC, Mike, isn't he?
Absolutely, he could have. And the Cronins had a shot at it. It didn't work out because of different things, and the money involved, and there's a whole string of things. But the thing with Keith is he is in a rally car. If he's doing a rally, we go to the rally and we don't really talk about the rally a whole pile on the way, and then we get there, and then you have to go make notes, and we get into he gets into a focus mode, and we'll make the notes on the day or the 2 days prior to the event. After that's finished, then it's time to relax. We completely detach from it. And this is something that I learned from him, and I found it great, actually, that he completely detaches from that. Then when that job is done in the evening, we'll go back to the hotel or whatever. If there's a soccer game on, that's his main focus. Let's go watch the soccer game or the rugby game, have dinner. Then comes the following day. If there's a job to be done for a few hours, full focus for that couple of hours, and then he completely detaches again. So a lot of the guys that go on to obviously coming from money or have a huge backing, they're completely obsessed, as in a rally or out of a rally, they're completely obsessed. Where Keith is on the weekend of a rally, he's in it, and then after that he's completely out of it again. He is completely detached from rallying, where it could be a thing that might hold you back. I'm not sure. But outside of it, he likes to do his other things, his normal life. And, he's not in it 24/7, 365. It's only those couple of days is when he's full on it and he can do the business, win the rallies, win championships. Outside of that, he takes a big step back from it, To
win 4 British Rally Championships in 4 different cars with 4 different co-drivers, that obviously shows the man is operating, Keith is operating at this very high level. How unique is that, what he's achieved? Like I said, there the different cars, the different co-drivers, yet he's still racked up 4 BRCs.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said before, the way R1 came down to a tenth of a second, you have a whole year of work, and more. You prior to the year, you have all the preparation, trying to put a package together, and then if you're lucky enough to get the package, you go in, you spend a whole year of stages and recce's and testing and rallies. It all has to work. You know what I mean? It's a huge equation that has to work out at the end. And there's so many opportunities for it to work, and there's so many chances that it might not work. So you could get, for us, if we had got all the way through the year down to that last stage and we got a puncture in that last stage, the whole year is gone. And we'll say if you don't win a championship and you're 6th or 7th or 8th after bleeding, it's forgotten about. That whole year is gone. It has to go right down to the end. And for him to have, done that 4 times, for everything to go right through a year, and to have got to win at the end 4 times, plus the Irish one, that's a lot of stuff that he has put right, and held together.
Within rallying circles, so Mikey, how highly is Keith how highly is Keith ranked? How highly do people hold Keith? Like, how good do people think, or how good do people know that Keith is?
I found it funny because before I started with Keith, I can remember doing the Cork 20 in 2015, and Keith was coming back. It was one of his first rallies for months, almost a year, and he was on the start line, and I can remember walking up and being like, wow, geez, this Keith Cronin guy. Like, I was like, this is pretty cool, getting to compete against this guy. Little did I know, the following year I'd be, in the car doing that same rally with him, going to win a championship. But you can see people swarming around and looking for information off him. He's very good when it comes to setup and, tires, and he's got a lot of knowledge of all the rallies around the country too. And, he's at it for years. His uncle Dennis has been there. He's been on the events, even if he wasn't doing the events. So you can see a lot of guys swarming around looking for information, and, they know he's going to be fast. Everyone knows, if Keith shows up, he's going to be fast, all the time. So even out in the UK, you meet people, and, he would almost know people in the British circles better than the Irish. Up until 2016 anyway, he would have known people in the UK better than he would in Ireland. So when we went to the UK first, I couldn't believe people that knew him and wanted to come up and talk to him. And, these people that I didn't even realize that he knew. He was having these huge conversations with people, and just from everywhere. It's constant. You can't go anywhere without someone wanting to have a piece of him. Do you know what I mean?
When it comes to the Best in the West final this Saturday, I'm going to ask you to make the pitch for Keith Cronin. Kind of, if there's people listening and watching this podcast now and they're on the fence whether it's going to be Keith Cronin or Phil Healy, why should people vote for Keith Cronin as the Best in the West?
Why should they vote for him? Look, I'm not going to say that I know everything about everyone else. It's not fair for me to say. But what I do know is that, Keith isn't finished yet. He's had all the success up to here. But, if he was to get that support, it might spark something to maybe get something maybe going next year or the end of this year. And, who knows where it could go. As I said, he's not finished yet. He could come back with a big bang yet. And it'd be great to have the support of people from West Cork and all over the country to back that and be a part of that,
The Best in the West in association with Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union is your trusted local financial partner. Access your money 24/7 from anywhere in the world with an Access Credit Union current account, and enjoy all the benefits while keeping your money local. We support local communities. We support you.
Welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. And Kieran, before we wrap up this week's show, maybe just remind listeners and viewers about how they can get involved with the Best in the West final this Saturday.
Like Jack said there, the Best in the West final is this Saturday, June 20th. The poll, like has been the case for the past couple of weeks, is on my own Twitter page. So you'll find me on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @KieranMac_SS. The poll will open at 10 a.m. and run through till 2 a.m. the following morning. So that's 16 hours there. So there's a huge window for people to vote. And I just want to urge people to vote, to cast their vote. Because if we're looking back on the semi-finals last weekend, we're talking about very, very fine margins. In Keith Cronin's semi-final win over Bill Daly, there was nearly 3,500 votes cast. And Keith won 50.5% to 49.5%. So that's 1%. So that's only a couple of votes that were the difference.
There were some people calling for extra time, Kieran. It was that close.
Oh, it was that close. It was a phenomenal epic duel, you can call it. And then on Sunday, it was just as close when Phil Healy came from the depths of hell to beat Paul O'Donovan, the world champion rower. And again, there was 1% the difference between the two of them. So I just want to urge everyone to vote for your favourite this Saturday. You have a large window there, so just hop on Twitter, click on your favourite. It's either Keith Cronin or Phil Healy. And please retweet the code as well, because we want to kind of spread the word that the Best in the West final is on this Saturday, and also at the same time spread the word that we have these sporting greats here in West Cork, and show the rest of the country and the rest of the world that West Cork is number one when it comes to sport. So head to my Twitter page on Saturday, vote for your favourite, and by Sunday morning we'll have crowned the Best in the West.
Yeah, look, live sport is coming back, but it has to be said that the Best in the West has filled that void over the last few months, so be sure to tune in for the final. But that's all we have time for on this week's edition of the Star Sport podcast. We'll be back next week, hopefully with an interview with whoever wins Best in the West, so watch this space. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to the show.